Good afternoon, everybody. We are very pleased to welcome you to another session of Discovery. This one's a bit of a special edition. So my name is Alison Moskowitz. I am the Director of Engagement at Efficiency Canada, and I am joining you from Calgary, Alberta, home of the Blackfoot Confederacy, the Tsuut'ina, the Stoney Nakoda Nations, and Métis Nation Region 3, and all the other people who make their homes in the Treaty 7 region. So I should mention, while I am in Alberta, I do work with Carleton University. So Efficiency Canada is based at Carleton University, which is located in the traditional unceded territories of the Algonquin Nation. So before we get started, just a little bit of an overview of today's session. Like I mentioned, we are having a special edition today. We have invited our regional champions to share what is going on in their specific provinces above and beyond what was published in the scorecard that we just released. So a bit about our regional champions. Regional champions are volunteer leaders that facilitate these connections between sector members, local advocates, government officials, and many more. Regional champions connect monthly to share local knowledge on key concerns of our sector, celebrate wins, and discuss ways to further support regional initiatives. Our combined efforts will develop a stronger network of energy efficiency advocates from coast to coast. So that's why we are here. With that, we're going to get started. We're going to start from the north and then loop our way west to east. Some of our regional champions weren't able to be here with us today. However, they did send some notes. You won't see all the provinces. Some were just not able to join us at all, but I will try to read some of the notes that our regional champions shared with us, and we will get going. Okay, so our first territory is Nunavut. So unfortunately, Heather wasn't able to be here with us today. So Heather is the director for NNC, which is Nunavut's first 100% Inuit-owned renewable energy developer. She is responsible for leading the development and implementation of a number of energy efficiency and renewable energy initiatives across Nunavut. To this day, the territory remains almost completely dependent on importing diesel for electricity and heating as part of an energy system that is unaffordable and unreliable, which is also a major source of pollution. And this is the major threat and challenge they're facing in Nunavut right now. So the federal government has a goal of eliminating diesel-powered electricity generation in remote communities by 2030. Ottawa has announced $300 million in additional funding over the next 5 years to help rural, remote, and Indigenous communities shift from diesel power plants to cleaner sources of electricity. So this includes solar and wind projects that are slowly starting to replace some of the reliance on diesel, but those are not without their challenges. Right now, there are major disagreements with the utilities about how the utility will pay for the renewable electricity the projects produce. This is a major barrier for these projects. So the QEC, so it's the Kulik Energy Corporation, currently does not have a policy in place for how to purchase electricity from independent producers. And in addition to this, there are also some bureaucratic battles about fuel switching from this reliable source of energy. There is a notion that what's working works, and there's a lot of hesitation to change. However, Heather did mention to me that she is optimistic that these challenges can be overcome and is working towards more reliable energy projects in Nunavut every day. So those are some notes that came from Heather. Next, we are going to move over to BC.
Good morning, everyone. I just want to say a quick thanks to the Efficiency Canada Scorecard team for this huge piece of work. It's so interesting to see where we are as a country, as individual provinces, and compare that to where we've been and where we think we might need to go next. So I'm Christine. I'm the owner and principal consultant at Harbor Green Consulting, where I work with governments and utilities on energy management and greenhouse gas emission reduction. I'm also the Efficiency Canada Regional Champion for BC. So I will give you my thoughts on BC. BC headline reads, British Columbia leads in scorecard rankings for the 4th year in a row, having earned 55 points out of 100. And the province continues to be a place to watch for best practices and policies. Next slide. So my initial reaction to this is, oh, that's so nice. I like being first. Who doesn't like being first? But Efficiency Canada notes that we have a strong climate plan and municipal empowerment, and I agree with this assessment. That's great. But if we're being honest, my son brought home a 55 on his test, and that would be a C-. He's actually still in elementary school, so they'd be a little bit gentler and they would say he's developing or he needs improvement. And Efficiency Canada notes this too. Our areas for improvement are there on the screen. I'm happy to report that there are some proposed changes to the DSM regulation that is in consultation right now. We're in the consultation phase, and among other things, it would change the primary cost-effectiveness effectiveness test from the TRC-MTRC model that we have currently to the UCT, which is exciting. But a couple notes on my opinion. I still think there's a few more areas that DC can improve on. We need to work together with people of varying perspectives, knowledge, and positions. The goal is greenhouse gas emission reduction. I think we can all agree on that. With respect to how we get there, engaging diverse opinions will strengthen our critical thinking skills and ensure that we have the best solutions coming. We also need to follow the building science and promote a systems approach. There's no silver bullet technology. Efficient electrification, embodied energy, life cycle analysis, and sufficiency should all become core to our lexicon. And finally, I think we need to change our frame of reference and look internationally for inspiration. Canada scored 13th out of 25 countries ranked in ACEEE's 2022 International Energy Efficiency Scorecard. And Canada, as we know, is one of the 10 most polluting countries in the world, both in absolute terms and per capita. So there's a lot to be learned from other people that are doing really great things. And certainly there's a lot more work to be done. Still, I just want to, just one more thing, just happy that BC is #1, obviously, and a big shout out to all the good folks working on energy efficiency in BC. It's definitely a team effort, and thanks again to Efficiency Canada.
Awesome. Thanks, Christine. Okay, so next we're going to Alberta. So these are just a few notes from the scorecard that Sandra wanted me to show today. So Alberta remains one of the only jurisdictions in North America that does not allow its utility providers to undertake demand-side management activities to lower energy system costs and reduce customer bills. This is evident in its 9th place finish, which hits me particularly hard because I'm in Calgary. So a report released in May showed that provincial programs enabling these activities would create $11 billion in net benefits over 20 years within the projects. That's a fair amount of money, even for oil and gas companies. So the need for energy efficiency is urgent, particularly since Alberta's fossil fuel heavy electricity system needs to reach net zero emissions by 2035 under a federal clean electricity standard. As energy costs rise, Alberta is also the only province without energy efficiency programs for low-income households. They have had them in the past. We have worked very closely with EmpowerMe, but right now, there are none, which is so unfortunate. And Alberta has had industrial energy management programs in place since 2018 with more than 130 participants. And this is Sandra Moore. She is our regional champion for Alberta. She's the Dean of Business, Environment, and Technology at Northcliffe College. So these are some of her additional comments. As Alberta's regional champion with Efficiency Canada, I would have appreciated Alberta bringing home some better grades this year, likewise, and not dropping 2 spots, but appreciated seeing that one of Alberta's strengths is in building codes. Alberta automatically adopts national model codes 12 months after their publication date, which means the province is scheduled to adopt the new 2020 codes earlier than most provinces. The province's next step is to establish a date for all new buildings to be net zero energy ready. Alberta has a lot of room to improve in low-income energy efficiency programs and energy labeling, as noted on the previous slide. And she also noted that Alberta excels in energy, including oil and gas and renewables. We can also excel in energy efficiency, and we will, thanks to the amazing innovative work being done in this province and around energy efficiency. So a message of hope, and I can definitely echo that message from Calgary. So next up, we have got Ontario. Go for it, Jeff.
Okay, let me get my notes up because as I said, I don't trust myself with 3 minutes. So I'm Jeff Floyd. I'm the Ontario Regional Champion, but working day to day at London Hydro. I'll share that energy efficiency has been a lifetime passion and career for me. And now that it's under a bigger carbon tent, I'm glad to see it's part of a more integrated approach to climate change mitigation. My email tagline is often, there is so much great work to be done, and I believe it. And I'm excited to see so many fresh people coming into the industry. So Ontario, our scorecard was pretty bang on, but the cutoff missed some wins. Drawing on the title of Efficiency Canada's one-pager, Energy Efficiency to the Rescue for Ontario. Overall, we're on the upswing and program dollars are king. As cyclical as the industry is, the same provincial government that cut electricity efficiency programming financing 4 years ago has this October added $342 million to the ISO's conservation budget for the 21-24 framework, bringing up to $1 billion for the framework's 4-year life. That's good news. It's still below the gold standard Conservation First framework of 2015 to 2020 that was cut down in 2019. Deploying that additional funding in the short 2 years left on the current framework may be a challenge. ISO had already been planning to both reintroduce and offer some new initiatives, strategic energy management being dear to my heart, but they're not known for speed. So let's see where they take it. The other big influencer, Enbridge, our main gas player, has been waiting on a response to their energy efficiency filing with the Ontario Energy Board. The November OEB ruling cut their proposed framework from 5 years down to 3, but provided a slightly expanded budget while asking them to adjust some program requirements that they deemed problematic. One of the wins here I'd like to highlight is on the residential end, and it starts next year in 23, where the federal Greener Homes program and Enbridge's similar Home Efficiency Rebate Plus program with slightly different rules will now be administered through one window. I don't have a perfect analogy, but think of having a choice of filing your taxes in 2 different places, but with different outcomes. How do you choose? Maybe you put it off. One window now, some rule changes that remove the need for the work to be done at a primary residence in most cases, less program friction. I love that. Plus, Enbridge has more experience than the feds in executing this kind of thing. I don't think I need to mention federal software deployment issues. My last but most important update, and potentially the biggest future game changer, is that Ontario has just finalized the makeup of the Electrification and Energy Transition Panel, first announced in April. This has been known as the Colley Panel, not as in border, but David, who chairs it. Reading from the materials, the panel will advise government on the highest value to time opportunities for the energy sector to help Ontario's economy prepare for electrification and the energy transition. So finally, we have a provincial group tasked with advising on big picture pieces and coordinating all of the conservation and electrification efforts. Our gas and electricity efficiency frameworks, and to a degree other federal and provincial initiatives, have been operating in attribution silos for years. So let's hope the panel efforts amount to thoughtful, integrated, and effective future efficiency operatings. By and large, this is a serious move in the right direction. So there we go.
Awesome. Thanks, Jeff, for the information and the jokes. Okay, so next up, we have got Matthew, who is representing Quebec.
Great, thank you. Thank you, Allison. Welcome, everyone. Thank you to Efficiency Canada for putting this massive work into the scorecard. I've had the opportunity of being a peer reviewer for the scorecard since the first one in 2019 or 2020, and can definitely testify the hard work required to pull this off. Good job to Efficiency Canada for this. So I'm Mathieu Cote. I'm the Executive Director at the Canadian Institute for Energy Training, CIET, that provide energy efficiency training across the country. I'm also representing Quebec as a regional energy champion for Efficiency Canada. While Quebec is very happy, I guess, to be third, we have always been second in this scorecard. And now at Nova Scotia, kudos to Nova Scotia, that has taken the second spot this year. And just like Christine said, 48 out of 100 is not a fantastic score. So we hope we could do better, and there are rooms for improvement that I'll discuss in a few seconds. Moving on to strengths, because there are great strengths. Quebec, like BC, is a rather mature market for energy efficiency, and there are great things here. One is public transit funding that was highlighted by Efficiency Canada. Quebec has the highest per capita public transit funding. And one thing that can surprise you, it does surprise me, and has the highest per capita public transit ridership. You could think that Toronto would be high in terms of public transit ridership, but maybe the lack of many lines. You guys in Toronto are building relief lines and others because you only have 2 subway lines. So that's great to see that the high per capita public transit ridership in Quebec. As well, one thing that I believe is potentially a game changer is the dual energy program by Énergie for gas and Hydro-Québec for electricity. That joint program that they've proposed is trying to make the best of both energy sources by roughly speaking, enticing Énergie customers to switch fuel to electricity, but keep gas to meet peak. So that's a very interesting program to see. I'm looking forward to see how it goes in real life. But I think that just having 2 utilities work together is a great thing. And that's really what we need, to look at energy as a whole and not electricity and gas in 2 different places. So I think that Sophie Brochu, the current Hydro-Québec CEO, who used to be Énergie CEO, she's really making this possible. So kudos to her as well. In terms of areas for improvement, I think that copying what Montreal has launched recently, where they have mandatory public disclosure of energy efficiency and GHG performance, that will be increased toward 2040 with carbon neutral buildings coming up in 2040. That's their expectation. So the Quebec government could definitely copy that playbook and apply this at a wider level, at a provincial level. And also that was one of the suggestions here by Efficiency Canada, that trying to approach decarbonization and electrification with systems that have at least 100% efficiency rate, which is a level that can be achieved by heat pumps. So not only switching to all those resistive systems you get from Ontario, for example, might be always laughing at people in Quebec where we have those resistive heating baseboards. Almost no one has that in Ontario, but it's extremely frequent here in Quebec, but it doesn't mean that they are extremely efficient. Last thoughts in terms of my opinion, I think that we should definitely focus on programs. The one with the joint program between Énergie and Hydro-Québec is a great step forward. And I'm biased here, but I think we need to ensure that there's capacity for whatever we want to undertake in the future. Promoting training, making sure that people are aware of what they can do, how their organizations can lead the decarbonization initiatives. And I think that we all hope in Quebec that we will be just moving forward, not going back like we've been doing since 1997, when the first Energy Efficiency Agency Quebec was created. It was created in 97, went back to the Energy Ministry in 2011. They recreated an agency in 2017, Transition Énergétique Québec, brought it back again in the ministry in 2020, and now changed the ministry, and the same team of energy efficiency experts are in the Ministry of Economy now. So I hope it's their final destination, and that they can, I'm sure they're working hard, that's not the point, but hopefully they will be working hard to making things happen, not changing business cards and things like that. So hopefully, I'm sure they all want that as well. So thank you, everyone, and up to you, Alison.
Thanks, Matthew. Okay, so next we have Chantal in New Brunswick, and I'm going to try to keep up with Chantal on her slides.
Thanks. Yeah, my name is Chantal Degverrier. I'm the New Brunswick representative and I work at MB Power en anglais aujourd'hui, mais n'hésitez pas de me contacter pour des informations en français. New Brunswick earned 3 more points than last year, and that should continue to rise because a lot is happening in our beautiful province. The province released a progress report of the previous climate action plan showing 55% of municipalities already have a climate plan, and GHG emissions reduced by 37% below 2005 levels. And here's the view on climate action plans from FCM and ICLEI partners for climate protection. We can see there's a lot of activity in a lot of municipalities. There was also the launch of EV incentives, tens of millions of dollars invested, exceeded a requirement of 40% of electricity from renewable sources, hitting 51% in the last fiscal year. The province has been making good progress on lowering emissions already and is meeting goals to date, as shown here, from the new climate action plan for 2022 to 2027. It identifies the goal of net zero greenhouse gas emissions by 2050. And we see that some good progress has been made. And this is the updated pie chart for emissions in New Brunswick. Our province does have a large proportion of buildings using electric heat, similar to the comments by Mathieu for Quebec, which makes transitioning to cold climate heat pumps easier than in some other provinces. Here are some of the highlights of the new 5-year plan that are relevant to this discussion of the scorecard. We're adopting NECB 2020 very soon, expect it to be within the next year. Phasing out oil with off-oil programs already starting, building energy performance labeling, and continuing GHG reporting within the province's output-based pricing system. We're setting new performance targets, supporting low-income, Indigenous, and non-electric programs, starting to offer financing, continuing to offer training and capacity building, and establishing sustainable funding sources for the programs. On areas for improvement, changes to the Electricity Act will enable new targets. And on low income, we just launched new programs at MB Power with new funds, 40 million, being announced recently for low and moderate income homeowners. These funds will provide free air sealing, insulation, and heat pumps for those heating with baseboards or oil. On the Save Energy MB landing page, there are programs for homes, for business, for community. We also have web services for Energy Star Portfolio Manager, and there are a variety of education opportunities posted. Our commercial program now has larger incentives, and the business rebate program provides 25% back against construction costs and has been very popular. We have soft launched a new construction program for the commercial and industrial sector. NECB 2020 will be the reference building, and is providing up to $125 per square meter for net zero energy buildings. And back to you, Allison.
Thanks, everybody. So as I mentioned, some of our regional champions weren't able to join us today. We are unbelievably grateful to the ones that could. That was just amazing information, and it's great to see your faces and your awesome personalities. If you do have any questions or want to chat to your regional champion in your province, we have them all listed on our website. So you can go and you can find out a little bit more about who your regional champion is and connect with them, because that's what they're here for. So let's get into the questions. This one is, I think, for maybe actually Jeff, it's for you because we talked about Enbridge. Can you elaborate on the change for greener homes to Enbridge administration? Do you have any info on that one?
It's high level at this point. I know that Enercan and Enbridge have been in conversations about how to pare down, not the program itself, but the customer interface side of things. So I expect that in the new year, from what I've heard, that it will be a single point of entry from a portal standpoint. And I don't know if Craig from Enbridge is on the line here, but he may have more information about the specifics, but happy to take that offline.
So Craig has raised his hand, and I'm
there we
going to
go.
see. Okay, Craig, I'm going to unmute you. And if you want to add something to that, go for it.
Can you hear me?
Yeah, gotcha.
Okay, what Jeff mentioned is true. Just this past couple of weeks, we've had a lot of things going on here in Ontario with Enbridge. So effectively, we have an agreement with Enercan. So starting in January, we will be the program administrator. And effectively, what the program does is we will try and put a single program face to the end consumer and a single portal. But the funding from the federal level and from Enbridge's DSM programming comes together. And we have an attribution agreement on the back end of how we will fund particular measures across the province. And so the consumer doesn't necessarily need to worry about two separate programs. They have one entry point. And for all intents and purposes, the two programs used to provide differing incentive levels across a variety of measures. Enbridge's were exclusively to Enbridge gas customers, and the federal was across all primary residences. So now there are a few complications on what will be happening, but instead of being able to go through this program or go through that program, you'll go through a single one. Incentives are stacked in many cases. And in many cases, instead of having a maximum cap at 5,000, it can go up to 10,000. Customers are generally going to be no worse off than either of the other programs. And in many cases, most cases, they're substantially better off. So we have that agreement that goes out till 2027 and roughly aligns with our new DSM program term, if that's helpful.
Thanks, Craig. I appreciate
thanks, Craig.
it. Jeff, anything to add on that one?
No, Craig said it succinctly, so
Okay.
leave it at that.
Awesome. It's so handy when we have those people on the line. Okay. And then Cindy just mentioned there's an information session next week. So that might be somebody or something that people in Ontario and across the province might want to tune into. There is a question for Craig in there, but in the spirit of this particular discovery session, I might just encourage, if you have questions for any of the other participants, to get in touch with them directly. So maybe I'll just kind of ask a question and open it to the floor. I am interested to know, is there anything coming down that you've heard of from the federal government that you see as particularly beneficial to your jurisdiction upcoming? Some of the things we know that are going to be coming out are the green building strategy. We know they're also going to have a building code adoption fund. I'm curious to know from everybody's perspective, what do you see that the federal government's doing that is going to particularly impact your jurisdiction? Anybody want to start with that one?
I guess I can jump in and say I'm looking forward to seeing what's coming up with the codes in 2025 in particular, but also for 2030, so that we can see and plan if you want to do a deep retrofit now, that you don't have to do it again in 2030.
Awesome.
I think the new supports for low-income programs are great.
Fantastic. Thanks, Christine. Jeff or Matthew, anything to?
Yeah, I'd agree. There's some action. I think I've personally been frustrated that this stuff has been announced in concept, but taken so long to actually turn into a policy coming down. I'm understanding how the programs and what's going on interrelates and gets launched. Like that's where the rubber hits the road. It seems to be where we get stuck and lose time. And time is money, time is carbon. I don't think that was in Wall Street in the 80s, but maybe there'll be a new Wall Street about saving the planet, who knows? But certainly glad to see the movement and just want to get things moving.
Jeff's new book is going to be called Carbon is Money. Matthew, did you have anything to add on that one?
I think we alluded to that earlier, but the recently announced program from NRCan for affordable residential transition from oil to heat pumps. I'm not sure exactly how they call it, but I think that will be a big thing. The key question is how can it work and absorb that as well, and how can the residential sector, they are already overwhelmed with everything happening with greener homes. I think the government itself is overwhelmed with their own program, so everyone is overwhelmed. So I'm just curious to see how this will unfold. It's not a fantastically big investment either. It's $250 million. It's a lot of money, but not that much. So I hope it doesn't confuse the market more than it already is, but that's an important thing to monitor.
Fantastic. Thanks. Okay, I just want to thank our regional champions again for presenting today. That was really fantastic. Our scorecard doesn't capture everything, and the information is historical, although we try to capture some things that have happened since 2021 because it does come out quite late in 2022. It's nice to hear the commentary and understand on the ground what's happening. So thank you so much for joining us today, and we will see everybody next week. I just wanted to give a little precursor of what's happening next week. So next week we are hosting Efficiency One from Nova Scotia, and they will be presenting their data visualization tool. So they have created a data visualization tool to help understand the causes of energy poverty, the geographic differences in where there are higher and lower levels of energy poverty, and how we can use the tool and data to target the areas that are most in need. And that sounds like something every province in Canada needs. So I encourage you to attend next week's discovery session. And thank you again for our regional champions. We will see you next week. Have a great day, everybody. Bye-bye.
Thanks, everyone. Take care.
Bye.